Hey, Meghann Scully, and this is the Limerick Post Show. Coming up in today's show, the big interview is with Dr. Annmarie and Vanessa Nakate, who were part of the CSSI 2020 virtual conference that took place in the University of Limerick. First up, though, the top stories in Limerick, and we are now entering phase 3 of reopening our country. From June 29th, creches, hairdressers, beauticians, bars and restaurants that serve food and many different businesses can reopen, and also we can travel anywhere around Ireland. It's also recommended that we wear face masks. Next up, I went off to Kilkee to find out how they are preparing to welcome the people of Limerick back. I'm now joined by Melda at the pantry here in Kilkee. A very different summer for you guys.
Very different. We just opened on Saturday, and as you can see, we're outside here at the pantry restaurant, which we had every year, and we also had a deli. So now we've changed it. We've changed our restaurant into a food hall, and we just opened on Saturday. It's been very successful. Everybody's delighted to see us open, and we're delighted to see everyone back over the weekend. We've been very busy, and people, love to come to Kilkee, and they've been pining really to come, and they've been missing us. So we were delighted, really. We couldn't hug and kiss today, but we had a good all-elbow shake, I suppose you'd say. So yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough.
We've got some good news from Taoiseach Leo Varadkar there this weekend. We are reopening the country phase by phase with stuff we brought forward, but it looks like Kilkee is almost ready to welcome back the people of Limerick.
They're all ready, and some came today even, I'd say. We had a little peep down, I think, to their accommodation and that. So yes, everybody's ready here in the town. We've all worked very hard. Loophead Tourism, we're all involved in it. We had our COVID courses. Everybody wants Kilkee to be the best in Loophead. You know, that they want people to feel safe here, and that's what we, did the weekend. We made sure everybody felt safe. We opened welcomes for them, and delighted, really. They were delighted, and people are just, I think it's going to be a different summer, but a lovely summer, because it's going to be all the Irish. They're delighted to be here. A lot of them, I did cookery classes on Instagram and Facebook during the winter, and they all were watching, and they said, God, it was like we were in Kilkee, and it was fantastic, so I think we'll have a great summer in a different way, and you have to make up your mind to be different, and that's what we did here. Now we have the food market, and everybody can take everything away with them, and that's really what they're saying they want a lot of the time. If they're sitting at home, or that they can get the goodies, they can get the carrot cake, they can get their tea, and I think that'll work good. You have to be able to adapt, really, and to change.
And of course, the sunshine is
and the sunshine, look at it today, isn't it fantastic? Oh my God, it's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic, yeah.
Many more days like this, hopefully.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, thank you.
Now to our Out and About section, I chatted to Father Seamus Enright of the Redemptorists in Limerick to find out about their virtual novena and how Mass has changed. First up, though, Cian went along to a community-friendly protest that took place on Catherine Street across the weekend, and he chatted to some of the people about what was going on.
We're here on Catherine Street today. It's closed off for a community day. Where did the idea stem from?
It kind of, the council released some plans for the COVID response. We really welcomed those plans, and we supported them, and loads of citizens supported them, and loads of businesses in the arts community were all supporting the plans. And unfortunately, the council pulled those plans this week, and they cut the car-free spaces back to outside of business hours. So there was nothing left in the plan for families, and as a result, there was a lot of on social media, there was a lot of people really upset, and we could just hear the anger. People were talking about organising protests and boycotts, and we didn't want any of those things. We set up a We Need Space campaign. It's just a social media campaign about getting support behind making space available for families this summer in Limerick. And unfortunately, even though a lot of submissions, or the majority of submissions, 55% of submissions were in favour of the car-free spaces, the council still pulled them in favour of the minority, about 35% that were against the car-free spaces. So there's nothing available in Limerick for families this summer, and there was a lot of talk. So we didn't want a big protest. We didn't want people boycotting businesses. It's important that we bring those people that were against these pedestrianised spaces into the conversation, and that we're all I think we all want the same thing out of this, We all want a Limerick that's accessible to people. We just maybe have different ideas about how we get there. So we wanted to quell that idea of a protest or a boycott of businesses, and we suggested that people come in and have a chat. We didn't expect this amount of people, but when these people arrived this morning, you can see it's a lovely environment. There's lots of kids out playing, and it's just this is what people want. This is what people want from the city. We look at Catherine Street here, the upper half of Catherine Street, it's derelict, you know, half of it's derelict, and it's not doing great. So you know, we're really we just want to see people coming into the city. We want to see some spaces for the city, so people are unhappy, and now they're out, you know.
And then the demonstration here today, you said it's not a protest, it's just a community day, and it's just to show people what can be done with the pedestrian industry.
Exactly, like we're not shouting with microphones, we're not here with big banners, it's not about kind of marching on City Hall or anything like that. I think there is probably an appetite for something like that among various people out there, but we wanted to kind of let people be together safely outdoors. Here we are moving about the city the way that it should be. If we weren't here, this street would just have cars going through it. There would be no one on the paths, there would be no one moving around, it would just be empty. And here we are making use of it. Yes, I'm not 100% sure about Nicholas Street because they changed for the amended plan and then published another amended version again, and I've kind of lost track of all the different ones. But in almost all cases, pedestrianisation is limited to either evenings after close of business, in which case people aren't going to be bringing their families in. You know, it's not really about making things safe for people to move around the city anymore, except at night, or on Sundays when this strip is mostly empty anyway, right? So there's not as much reason to be coming in then either. So we're really disappointed by the way that whole thing happened.
As a family person yourself, what difficulties do you see getting into the city and enjoying the city?
Well, you know, the city has been neglected with regards walking and cycling for a long time. So, you know, there's efforts being made, there's a transport strategy coming, we know there's things coming down the line, and that's going to change. But there's no spaces to settle in the city. If I want to buy a book and maybe my wife wants to go to the shops, or you know, I want to grab a coffee, I want to let the kids maybe run around and do something like this, you know, there's no spaces like that in the city, you know. So we look at Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork and we say, wow, isn't that an amazing street? You know, there's people out on it all the time. We look at Shop Street in Galway. You know, why don't we have those streets in Limerick? We can have those streets in Limerick, you know. It's just about putting it on the agenda, so it's about making it important enough, you know. So a lot of people came out and supported the initial proposal, and we commend the council for putting that on the table initially, you know, because it's brave and they're big steps, but unfortunately they rolled back on it, you know, and they just took that away from the city. So, you know, people are going to be going to Shannon, you know, people are going to be going to Clare, people are going to be going to Galway, they're going to be going to other places this summer because there's nothing in the city for people during the day.
Hey, Meghann, Scully, and this is the Limerick Post Show. We're here outside the Redemptress in Limerick, and I'm joined by Father Seamus Enright. A very unusual time for you.
An absolutely unusual time for us because we're in the middle of celebrating our annual Novena, so this place would normally be buzzing with people and we'd have chaos on the streets around with the traffic, and now of course the church is open but not all that many people in it, and we're streaming the Novena online.
I suppose that's a new way for all the churches now, is streaming online. And I know the Novena has started already. How are the people responding to being online?
Well, we started on Friday and we had a little bit more than 19,000 hits on Friday, with which we were delighted. Now, I haven't checked the numbers since then, but it got us off to a very good start. One of the things that's been interesting for us is we miss the people, of course. You miss having people around. But we're probably in more contact. We're probably in contact with more people since we closed the church than we ever were when the church was open, because, as I say, on Friday we had 19,000, but on an average day during the lockdown we've had between 4,000 and 5,000 people. Wow. And at the weekends it's gone up to 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. It was about 15,000 on Easter Sunday, and it's worldwide. So you have this sense, you're in the church, you're preaching, you're saying Mass, you think there's nobody there, and there is a congregation, but you can't see them, and it's a little bit strange saying Mass and preaching without people in front of you.
And with the current guidelines, when can you start letting your parishioners back in?
We're hoping that we can do it on the 29th. Now, there's a little bit of controversy going on at present because we were led to believe by the government that we could open on the 29th and that each church would calculate how many people it could hold safely. Yeah. Then last weekend they said 50. And so there's some negotiation going on at present, because it doesn't make any sense for us in a church that can hold 1,000 people to restrict it to 50. We had calculated ourselves about 120 safely. Yeah. So we're hoping that on Thursday the government will announce a compromise on that.
I think we saw as well, like communions, confirmations, weddings, funerals, everything has to change. And I know the weddings can come back, but again, it's only 50 people, isn't it?
I mean, I was supposed to celebrate 4 weddings, all of which have been deferred into the autumn and into next year. One friend of mine said she'd wait until next year to be doubly sure, but the others are all hoping for that the numbers might have increased a little bit by September, because you probably noticed on the paper yesterday that the 50 includes the venue staff.
Yeah.
So that restricts the numbers further. So it's been hard on people, I think, whose weddings, baptisms, confirmations, but I think the people who've really suffered are people who've had a bereavement, because we haven't been able to mourn. And Irish people do funerals so well, and the neighbours turn out and we talk and we drink and we tell stories. So I expect that after the lockdown begins to lift, that there's going to be a lot of trauma and a lot of unresolved grief and a lot of distress. So and then I think in parishes especially, not so much here, but in parishes, I think a lot of memorial masses will have to be made up for because people didn't have the funerals properly.
And Father, do you think the sign of peace will be done away with now due to the coronavirus restrictions?
For the time being, at least. I think for the time being, people will have to receive communion on the hand only, not on the tongue, that the sign of peace will be so distant from each other in the church anyway that sign of peace won't be possible. There won't be holy water in the fonts. Anything that risks contagion will be eliminated.
Okay, that's interesting. I suppose big changes for all of us all around the world. And finally, Father, if parishioners want to tune in, where can they tune in for the novena?
Yeah, they can come to novena.ie. It's easy to remember.
Brilliant.
And they'll find us there. And the church is open every day between 12 and 6 if people want to come and pray in the church and make a visit.
Father Seamus Enright, thank you so much for chatting to us on the Limerick Post Show.
Thank you very much for having me, Meghann. Thank you.
Hey, Meghann Scully, and this is the Limerick Post Show, and I'm delighted now to be joined by a lecturer from the University of Limerick, Dr. Annmarie Ryan. How are you?
Not too bad, yeah. Hi from my home in Beaufort, County Limerick.
I have to say, a very unusual time, but we've moved online, and we're not the only thing that's moved online, because CSSI 2020 is now a virtual conference with the Kilkee Business School and the UL Sports and Conference Arena. Can you tell us more about the event and moving online?
Yeah, we took up this conference about a year and a half ago to organise it. It's the first time it's come to Ireland. It's been in Boston, Toronto, Amsterdam, or Rotterdam, I think. It's been all over the world, and this is the first time it's been in Ireland. And I was really looking forward to bringing everybody to Limerick. And we were working really closely with Deborah in the UL conference team in support of that. And when we decided to go online, I have to say that the conference, Deborah and her team were amazing, because they were like, okay, let's go for it. And we found a platform that would help to host all the events, because you imagine in an academic conference, there's lots of different moving parts, parallel sessions, plenary talks, there's so many things going on, and also the social and the interaction is really, really important. So we wanted to find a platform that would help to bring all those things together. So we found that in a new platform started out of a university in Portugal, would you believe? We've been doing that, and it's been a huge amount of work, a huge amount of learning, but we're already now in our second day of the conference, and it's working really, really well. I think everybody's really pleased.
And I suppose the great thing about being virtual and being online is more people across the world can now tune in as well, which I guess is a positive you can take from this.
Absolutely. So we had a number, we had over 80 papers submitted anyway, to the Limerick conference. And we, most of those people were still able to come, and there are over 22 countries, which is really exciting. But yeah, I think we got even more people coming than more recently. We had some amazing high caliber academics joining us from the States yesterday, who I'd only dream of maybe seeing if I went to a conference in America, one of the larger academic conferences. So it was fantastic, because they could give an hour of their time and involve themselves in a panel, and they were really excited about that too. So it's been amazing how people can connect, and we had over 15 doctoral students as well as a whole session yesterday for them, and they've come from all over the world. Now we were very lucky to have and very delighted to have Irish Aid support for that. So Irish Aid were sponsoring the doctoral consortium. They were funding those students to come to Limerick, which would have been amazing, right? Because those travel expenses, particularly when you're coming from the global south, it just seems unimaginable to have 1,500 plus for an academic conference when you're a student. So we had that money. So what we're doing instead when we went virtual is that we're moving that into a bursary scheme, so a research bursary scheme. And those students who apply and get that money will be looking particularly at the role of partnerships in response to the COVID crisis. So it's very current, it's very now. So we're delighted with that. So again, you're able to adapt and change to the new circumstances.
It's an absolutely incredible lineup. We're going to be chatting to Vanessa Nakate after this as well. So very interested to hear from her. Obviously, she went viral during the year when she was cropped out of a photo at Davos. And, I think she's going to have so much to offer us here in Limerick as well.
Totally. She's got such an important message and she delivers it so brilliantly. And Vanessa was a perfect choice for us as a keynote speaker because activism is actually a really important part of the idea of partnering, because we do need the different sectors do need to come together in order to address the challenges that we face. And activism brings a very particular voice to the table. It brings the voice of the people who are most affected. It really helps keep things real. Potentially, as these big non-profit organizations and government organizations and companies get together to sort of design the future, activism can be a really important voice to keep us grounded and to keep us connected to places. And that is the thematic of our conference. It's about how partnerships are connected to places. So we really want to keep that sort of sense of grounding, and Vanessa just brings us straight into that space. It's challenging space. It causes us to reflect and to think, but also it's very empowering and how we might be part of the change.
Absolutely incredible. And what is coming up later in the week then for CSSI 2020?
So we have a full day today and tomorrow. We have Vanessa's keynote address, which is actually being introduced by Saoirse Exton, our own Fridays for Future campaigner. So again, that link to place is really important. There's also a number of sessions, particularly on partnership brokering. So these are the kind of intermediaries that help to work between these different sectors. It's such a vital role. So we're really putting the spotlight on that. And also we have a roundtable, which is particularly looking at how us as a community of researchers might respond to the COVID crisis. So it's an action-packed day, and we have some music from Emma Langford as well. So we're really keeping that social dimension of the conference, really to the heart of it. So Emma's doing a short piece this evening and a longer concert for us tomorrow, bringing on some of her guests that she's been exploring over the last few weeks when she's been doing her own streaming. So, and tomorrow again, full, nearly 80 academic papers will be delivered by the end of Thursday. So it's action-packed.
A busy time, but it sounds absolutely incredible. And I love the way there you have so many links between international speakers and Limerick people as well. So it's really bringing it all home.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the plan.
Dr. Annmarie Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of CSSI 2020.
Thank you so much, Meghann. It was lovely. Thank you.
It's the Limerick Post Show with me, Meghann Scully. I'm delighted now to be joined by activist and climatist Vanessa Nakate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Now, you're in Uganda right now, aren't you?
Yes.
And I believe you're 2 hours ahead.
Yeah, I think so, because it's 7:18 right now, p.m.
Exactly, 2 hours ahead. Now, you were just speaking at CSSI 2020. It was meant to take place in the University of Limerick, but of course, due to coronavirus and the situation, it did move online. But I saw on social media, you had a great turnout for the event. How was it being one of the keynote speakers?
Well, it was amazing for me because I always appreciate any kind of platform that helps amplify the story that I'm trying to put across and the message that I'm putting across. So I felt very, very honored to be among the keynote speakers, and I appreciate it.
And a lot of people would have heard your name after the incident that happened in Davos. You were cropped out of a photo and then you hit headlines all across the world. How has it been since then, and the response to that happening?
Well, when that photo happened at the beginning of this year, of course, as you've said, that's when most people got to know about my work. And honestly, about that, I just have to say that it is a sad reality for many activists in Africa. I mean, well, many people now notice my work, but then there are quite a number of activists in Africa who are doing so much. So I always ask myself, do we have to wait for them to be cropped out as well so that their work is noticed. So to me, that is a sad reality for the public to wait for these, occurrences to take place in order to recognize the work that different people are doing, especially in the African continent. And after everything, of course, there was massive support, I must say, and quite a number of interviews followed by that. So I must say that my voice was amplified in a way, and I really appreciate that and the support that came in from the different people in different parts of the world. And this really pushed me to keep working and to keep demanding for action, as well as help other activists in the African continent to tell their story and give the solutions that they have for the planet.
So Vanessa, you're also the founder of the Rise Up movement. Can you tell me all about it and when you set it up and why?
Well, I started the Rise Up movement at the beginning of this year to basically help amplify the voices of the different climate activists in the African continent. And by the time I started it, of course, I had seen there's a certain kind of vacuum, and I had seen that many activists in Africa have tried so much to tell their story, to talk about how climate change affects their regions, and they hadn't got that platform. So I started this movement to try and help the different activists. And in this movement, we have a project. It's called 1 Million Activist Stories, where we tell different stories and share them on the blog. Basically, that is what the movement is about, because I personally believe that every activist has a story to tell, and every story has a solution to give, and every solution has a life to change. So we need to give everyone an opportunity to change a life in this world.
It sounds absolutely incredible. And Vanessa, can you take us back to when you first started getting involved in climate action and as an activist? Or was there a moment in your life that you kind of thought, you know what, this is something that I'm going to be a voice for, and this is something that I'm going to pursue and to make a difference on?
Well, I remember that becoming a climate activist was a process for me. It is not something that I grew up thinking about or something that I ever wanted to be when I was younger. But I remember in the year 2018, I felt like I wanted to do something that could cause change in the lives of the people in my community. Therefore, I started carrying out research to understand the challenges and the problems that the people faced. And personally, I was surprised to see that climate change was one of those problems, simply because in school it is taught as something that either happened in the past and we do not have to worry about. So I decided to read more about it, to understand its causes, to understand its impacts. And when I realized that there were communities in Uganda that were already staring climate change in the face, for example, in the northern part of the country, the dry spells are increasing. In the western part of the country, floods are destroying people's lives. So when I realized that there were communities that were facing these impacts right now, I decided that I had to start climate activism. So I read about different forms of activism and how people, spread their message and created awareness. And that is how I got to know about the Fridays for Future Climate Strikes that was started by Greta. And I decided that I would also start striking for climate in my country.
It's absolutely incredible the work you do there. And as I said, you are speaking at the CSSI 2020 event in UL that was brought together by the Kenny Business School and the UL Sports and Conference Centre. And some of the quotes that I saw across social media that I thought were really powerful were, the youth are showing you the direction. So I think, you mentioned Greta there yourself, and I know there's so many activists around where we are in Limerick and Ireland that are doing so much. And as you said, they're young people. It's the young generation that are standing up, that are making their voices heard on climate change.
Well, of course, there are millions of voices, and the demands are very clear and they're very direct. And that is climate action, that is giving up the fossil fuel industry by our leaders. And as I say, the youth are showing the world the direction, the youth are showing the leaders the direction. but then it is the leaders to decide to either take the direction that will ensure protection of the people and protection of the planet and the animals and the plants, or taking the direction that will end up destroying all of us. We as the youth, we have the voices, we have the platforms. We will demand for change. We will show you what needs to be done, but you decide if you do it or not. We will give you the direction. Unfortunately, we don't have the power to make the decisions, because if we had the power to make some of the decisions, then we wouldn't be striking, because we would make the right decisions to make sure that the world can be a better place for everyone. So this is to all leaders out there. We are showing you the direction. Do you choose to go in that direction, or do you choose to go in the direction that is going to destroy our lives and destroy the coming generations and literally take away a planet from our eyes?
Vanessa, it's absolutely incredible chatting to you here and to learn more about the campaign and the work that you're doing. And final bit of advice for those who are watching this, what would you say to them, or maybe what could they do to maybe start making small steps towards climate change, even if it's only around their own homes?
Well, there's so many things that people can do, because you find that at these conferences, many people listen, but they just stop at listening. So what I would say, now is the time to stop at just listening and actually, take some action in your community. You can run some small projects in your community. There's simple ways that can actually save our planet. The easiest, I would say, giving up plastics and maybe buying a water bottle for yourself. That is very easy. Buying a bag, a reusable bag, so that you don't have to use plastic bags when you're buying something.
So yes. Vanessa, you mentioned there plastic, cut down on plastic, reusable water bottle, reusable bags, and I think it just shows the little steps can make a massive difference when it comes to climate change.
Yes, exactly. It's all about the small acts. It's all about the little steps. Before someone graduates in school, they start from, in my country, they start from nursery, and then you go to primary, and then you go to secondary, and then you go to university. So you don't just go from nursery to university. So it is those small acts. If millions of people work together and they have the same unified purpose, unified vision, we'll be able to drive the change. Because if you do not use the plastics, that means that we will force the plastic companies out of business, whether they like it or not. So we have to take those individual actions. But remember, even the voice, your voice and your platform is needed, to push our leaders in making the right decisions in regards to the kind of industries that they invest in. We cannot afford to continue investing in the fossil fuel industry, because however much we take the individual actions, we know that the fossil fuel industry is going to continuously increase on the global emissions, and this is what is going to make the climate crisis worse.
Absolutely. Vanessa, Nakate, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I could chat to you for hours about everything that you do. I know you're on social media, and you are, of course, you have the Rise Up movement as well, and the Million Voices Twitter. I saw the Twitter pages too. And is there any final message you'd like to leave with our viewers here in Limerick?
Well, what I would say is that you matter and you are capable of bringing about change in your community. You don't have to be, up there. You can start from the grassroots, because a lot of lives can be changed on the grassroots. You realize that the people that are affected the most are never at the top. There are those in those communities, the small communities, the local communities, the rural communities. They are in your community. So you can do something to save a life. And I'll end with something that I've already said. Every person has a story to tell, and that story is able to provide solution for any problem in this world, and your solution will be able to save someone's life. So wherever you are and whoever is watching, we believe in you, and we know that you are capable of driving change in your community and in this world.
Vanessa, thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
For these stories and so much more, head over to limerickpost.ie/show. I'm Meghann Scully. This is the Limerick Post Show, keeping Limerick posted.